Well, the World Health Organization is reviewing their guidelines on wearing masks in public after new evidence has indicated it may have helped curb the spread in countries like Hong Kong. Now, until now, the World Health Organization has discouraged mask use, but with so much from the WHO, it's hard to know if they can even be trusted anymore. Sky News host of Outsiders, Rowan Dean, joins me now via Skype. Rowan, great as always to have you on the show. Last night I interviewed Ian Duncan Smith. You would know him, former leader of the Conservative Party in Britain, former Work and Pensions Secretary of State. He had some very telling comments in relation to the bureaucracy of the World Health Organization. Let's have a listen.
The big difference between when the ex-Norwegian Prime Minister was running the WHO, where she was very hard on them straight away at the beginning, this time round, they've been much easier. And in fact, it's intriguing. I think the WHO has spent a lot of its time actually having a go at Western governments about the way they've behaved over this particular outbreak, and had nothing but quiet praise for the Chinese.
I tell you what, Rowan, out of this, we've got to radically rethink which of these and what global organisations we're involved in, which ones we can possibly influence and change, and how much in Australia we remake our sovereignty and the way I think we've allowed 30 years of globalism and identity politics to take away what I think has been very much Australia's national interest.
Yeah, well, Peter, you will probably be familiar with the former editor of Quadrant, John O'Sullivan's Law. O'Sullivan's Law says that any large body or organisation that isn't actively being either conservative or centre-right or free market or whatever it is will invariably drift quickly to the left. And that is exactly what's happened with things like the World Health Organization. I mean, it is a joke. We should have nothing to do with it. The bloke who's now in charge of it has disgraced himself at every stage. He was basically selling the Chinese, saying, oh, no, they've done, you know, there's no human-to-human transmission going on in China. It's all safe. So it actually did, back in January and February, the World Health Organization, which every nation pays into, like the United Nations, it's there to help us. We pay for it, we subsidize it, but it was actively working against our interests and as a propaganda arm for the Chinese. Absolute disgrace. We should be pulling out of that organization tomorrow and having nothing more to do with them. By all means, let's have a world body that looks after health, but not that one. It's been completely corrupted, much as the United Nations has been completely corrupted, Peter. For the last decade or so, they have been endlessly warning us about climate change, and they have deliberately ignored many experts who were pointing out, even almost to the wet market in Wuhan itself, saying one of the big global threats coming down the pipeline would be a global virus coming out of China due to the contamination in the wet markets of live animals. So the warning was there. They were all pandering to climate change and running around with Greta Thunberg and Sir David Attenborough and Prince Charles and the rest of them, ignoring a serious major risk. They've been discredited. The UN are discredited. We have to get back in charge, as you say, Peter, our own sovereignty, looking after ourselves and not relying on these basically corrupted organisations to do it for us.
I do find it intriguing to watch all the various scientific views on this health crisis differ and scrap and have, I think, wildly differing theories of how you might contain this virus. You know, the herd mentality, flattening the curve, running out there with, you know, higher peaks, lower peaks. And we're allowed to have that debate. In fact, it's encouraged, and particularly if the debate from the scientists disagrees with the scientists that are supporting the Prime Minister. But when you come to the issue of climate change, scientists like Ian Plimer and Peter Ridd, you know, they are ostracised. We're not allowed to have any debate on the science side in relation to issues like climate change. So, you know, we're seeing a very different science debate than we're allowed when it comes to environmental matters. And we're also, I think, apologising for a whole lot of characters. You know, when you went to the CPAC conference last year and Tony Abbott and the CPAC organisers had to front with the threat of legal action and jail time, a whole lot of departments in Canberra about whether or not there was foreign influence with them attending a Conservative conference. You've got this turkey in the Parliament in New South Wales, this Labor MP, who basically has gone out there on a very pro-China push. Now, he's been backed in by his leader in New South Wales. There was a question I'll play it in a minute put to Bob Carr, and he just danced right away from this question on Alan Jones today. But we've also got some footage of Shaukat Musselman himself, in his own words, talking up China.
You don't have to accept my words, just listen to what the World Health Organization had said. It clearly said that the government has took the appropriate action to ensure that this coronavirus does not spread worldwide. It has spread a little, but because it was contained so much in China, that meant that the rest of the world had not been affected as it would have if those measures were not taken.
So, Peter, there you see how the system works. This clown is quoting the World Health Organization to say that they have validated China's reaction, therefore China. So all this mob are all in it together. And to the shame of the Labor Party, they are incredibly close, far too close to the Chinese, far too close to these organizations. And we've seen it, that's one example of it, but there have been plenty of others.
Yeah, and it's just interesting there. You can see the media sitting there with their microphones. This wasn't the free media. He invited only the Chinese media, just as Sam Dastyari did in the election campaign when he was putting out a very tight view to Chinese press. He didn't invite anyone else, and he took it upon himself to change Labor Party policy. Interestingly too, just before we go, some big changes, or at least an interregnum from Josh Frydenberg this week when he said there'll be no foreign investment approvals if it is over a 0 point unless they come past my desk. Now, that's not the case. There's thresholds of 15 million and 35 million. He's brought them right down. I think he is very mindful that we could have distressed Australian companies after this, and the Chinese will swoop.
Well, Peter, as you said before, Tony Abbott, yourself, myself, Andrew Cooper, others were basically tarred with being foreign agents for speaking at a CPAC conference. Meanwhile, as the bureaucrats pushed by Mark Dreyfus in the Labor Party to investigate the CPAC conference, they completely turned a blind eye to the fact that so-called companies, Chinese companies operating in Australia, were working at the very behest of the Communist Party of China. In other words, they were legitimately foreign agents working on behalf of a foreign government, buying up all our shelves, all our products, all our hygiene and health products that we needed to fight the virus. They were buying it up and shipping it out of the country. The absolute hypocrisy from Labor. And as I said, the relationship with China, the closeness between Labor and China, or more importantly, the Chinese Communist Party and all its many tentacles, is terrifying.
All right. As always, Rowan Dean, tell us what you think. No holds barred. See you again at 8 o'clock tonight and also on Sunday morning.